Loads of bands have included Morse code messages in their music. Perhaps most famously was when Mike Oldfield injected a hate message directed at Richard Branson into his 1990 work, Amarok. But today, I want to try something different. Instead of creating a message and injecting that into our song, I'm going to use the coded message itself as our source of inspiration and make an idea around that. So let's do it. So this is our code, and here's what it sounds like. We got a fucking hit on our hands. This is gonna be sick. What you need to know about Morse code is that the letter values range from 1 to 4 dots and or dashes. For example, E is the shortest letter, being 1 dot, followed by I with 2 dots, S is 3 dots, and T is 1 dash. On the other side, the longest letters in the alphabet are J, Q, and Y, each of which contain 3 dashes and 1 dot. So no matter what, every letter in the alphabet has a maximum of 4 dots and or dashes. Things like numbers and punctuation are 5 or more dots or dashes, but we won't be looking at them today. Now, if we wanted to be Morse code accurate, the value of 1 dot is our smallest unit of measurement. A dash is equal to 3 continuous dots. And then there's the spaces. The space between letters is equivalent to 3 continuous dots, and the space between words is equivalent to 7 continuous dots. So that's the basic idea of Morse code. 1 dot is our smallest unit, 3 dots is equal to 1 dash. 3 silent dots mean new letter, and 7 silent dots mean new word. Now, as we're turning this into music, it's open to some creative interpretation, and because it's my music, I get to decide the rules we follow. First rule, a dot is equal to a quaver or an eighth note, and the second rule is that a dash is equal to a crotchet or a quarter note. To keep things simple, I'll treat the spaces with the same value as the notes, but with rests. So a quaver or eighth note rest is a space between letters, and a crotchet or quarter note rest is a space between words. And with that out of the way, if we align our Morse code to the rules I just set, it looks like this. Surprisingly, this idea already sounds like metal. Check this out. Sure, it's a bit weird, like I can't really connect to that idea, but this is really similar to one of the easiest riff writing methods. The method I'm talking about is to take the rhythmic subdivisions and throw in random rests until you've made a legit metal riff. This is essentially what the Morse code is doing, with the major difference being that I would usually curate those random rests until I found something that I liked. But I can't do that if I want to keep the Morse code intact. Anyway, with an instrument like guitar, it's hard to distinguish the full length of quick notes and rests unless you're working at a much slower speed. So I'm going to put in another rule that all dot notes are on the open string and all dash notes are something, literally anything higher. So let's give that a listen in its most basic form. That was badass. Like, it obviously still needs work, but we've got something that we can actually work with here. Side note, when you're recording tight guitars like this, where the silence is as important as the notes you hit, crank up the gate. That will give your guitars a much more definite start and end rather than random amp or string noise messing up your performance, which can also ruin your mix. Back to the riff, I want to play with this a bit more to make it more interesting. So what I'm going to do is turn all those dash notes into something melodic rather than something generic. And this is what I landed on. Cool, so that's the foundation of the idea completed. To be totally honest, that was really difficult to learn, and I should have spent a lot more time tightening it up, but whatever, you get the idea. The problem with something like this is this whole riff doesn't repeat at all, so I had to treat the idea like a singular rhythmic idea that I simply needed to learn from start to finish. There were no shortcuts. So if you want to improve your rhythm, write something like this. It will help. But however good this might be for your technique, it's not yet music. So far, we've mainly looked at the rhythms with some attention given to the notes. And that's great, but once again, it's not yet music. As an experiment, I want to put this idea a couple of octaves up. As a riff, it doesn't feel quite right to me. but let's give it a listen up an octave and see if it feels better as a lead line. Cool, I think that's usable as a lead line, but to be totally honest, I don't see this as being a really strong lead line compared to the riff. It's much of a muchness which way I choose to go with it, but we'll come back to this in a second. So the final step is to stop treating every instrument as a slave to this rhythm. The riff is completed, but the bass and drums don't have any autonomy. In addition to that, adding in some post-production elements or lead lines over the top would make it feel far more like music. What really needs to be done is for me to choose whether this idea will be played down low as a riff or up high like a lead line. But being me, I wanted to hear both versions fully realized, so I'll play both for you. But before we hear that, here's the Jakety Jake Jake final take. Writing music can be this simple. As you can see, I've taken a Morse-coded message, washed it through some basic but arbitrary rules, and turned it into music. And it may seem counterintuitive, but working with restrictions like this can sometimes be the best thing for your creativity and in turn, your music. So here's the two final versions of my Morse code song.